This is TWiT.
Okay, Padre, it's your turn. More that we can do about Equifax.
Right. So, of course, everyone by now has heard all the details, and they continue to come out. And, Steve, I got to tell you, some of it is just head-scratchingly bad. It's as if someone designed a program to fail, bringing in the wrong people, bringing in the wrong technology, and bringing in the wrong security measures. But what we wanted to do, and what we've done on a couple of the TWiT shows, including Know How and TNT and the new Screensavers and TWiT, is we've talked about some of the strategies to sort of minimize the Equifiasco. Now, I know that you and Leo talked about the credit freeze, right? I mean, that's right. He advocates it, and the reason why he advocates it is there's a little bit of revenge, because if you put a credit freeze on your finances, you're essentially telling the CRCs, the credit reporting companies, that they are not allowed to make money off your information.
Well, and in fact, 30 months ago, after the Anthem breach, that was our advice on this podcast. I created a bit.ly link, bit.ly/freeze credit, which takes you over to the Clark.com page that lays out the details per reporting agency, how to get them to shut down. So, yes, that's, that's certainly the first step.
Now, but we went over a couple of different strategies because there are options available to you, some of which are free and some of which are paid. Now, the most well-known and the easiest is the fraud alert. Let's actually talk about this, because there's 3 levels of fraud alert. One only applies to U.S. military, and that allows them to put an alert on their account for 1 year free of charge, giving them access to 2 credit reports per agency per year. But the ones that our audience are probably going to run into are the standard credit fraud alert, which lasts for 90 days. And unlike 5 years ago, you don't actually have to call in. All you have to do is go to the website of one of the CRCs. I would suggest TransUnion, just because it's really simple to use. You do have to give some personally identifying information, which I'm always a little risque about, but at least I'm not giving it to Equifax.
To authenticate yourself to them.
Precisely. But once you place a credit fraud, they must report it to the other CRC. So you only have to do it once. You don't have to go from CRC to CRC. It works for 90 days. You can go ahead and get yourself a free credit report. And here's the thing. You can get a free credit report every year from every, but that's cumulative, not cumulative, over the CRC. So I could actually get one every 4 months going from CRC to CRC. That's actually an important step. Now, after 90 days, if you do the online version of it, you can just renew. It's just a simple click, and they'll renew it for another 90 days. There is one for active exploitation of your ID. If you are confident that someone has tried to open up credit in your name, you can ask for an extended fraud alert. And what that does is it works for 7 years. And you don't have to renew every 90 days. That works much better. But the difference between a freeze and a fraud alert is simple. In a fraud alert, anyone coming to one of the CRCs and asking for your credit report, they can get the information, but they are given a warning that this account has been put under fraud alert, and here's a number which you provide that they should call to verify that you're actually the person requesting credit, a new mortgage or card, whatever. But they can still get the information, which sounds bad, but it actually can be good. Let me explain that. In a freeze is different, because when you put a credit freeze, no one can access your credit report unless you specifically allow them to. So you have to whitelist any company that wants to look at your credit. Now, you may say that, well, that's good. We're all about whitelisting. We're all about trusting no one, except in modern society, a lot of people don't realize how many times your credit report is accessed. And it's not just when you want a loan or a mortgage or a credit card. It could be the next time you try to get a phone, the next time you try to get a job, you try to get an apartment. All of those are going to ask for your credit report. And if you have a freeze, you have to whitelist every single one of those. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Additionally, the rules for freezes differ from state to state. In some states, it's indefinite. When you put a freeze on, it's frozen until you unfreeze it. In other states, it'll last for up to 7 years. And there can be a fee both putting the freeze on and taking the freeze off, so they can get you both coming and going. Now, we don't tell people not to do a freeze, but at the very minimum, and at the easiest thing to do is to put a fraud alert. And so that's really the start of the spiel. On Know How, if you take a look at episode, I think it was 344, we went over a bunch of different apps that can train you to take better care of your credit. A lot of people don't actually do the maintenance, the bare maintenance that they need to do to make sure that their credit isn't being used, that there isn't some fraud going on. And also, Steve, I don't know how you feel about this, but there are so many people, and not just young people, there are adults who don't know the basics of finances. And this makes it so much easier to exploit you when you don't actually understand how your credit works. Have you seen that?
The one thing I'm puzzled about, you said that the fraud alert, you place a phone number, so it's the credit, the company that is querying them for your credit must call you, except there's no enforcement for that, right?
There's no enforcement, but here's the thing. If they opened up a line of credit on an account that had been flagged for a fraud alert, and they did not call that number to verify you, then if anything does happen,
then they're liable.
They're liable. So no company, no legitimate company that's trying to grant you credit would dare not call.
Well, and what we're trying to prevent is a malicious other party. I don't know whether it's third or fourth or fifth. We've got too many parties going on in here, but we're trying to prevent the case of somebody else applying for credit in our name, so that the company verifying that application would be the one to call us to make sure that it's really us who is applying for the credit rather than that malicious party. So that if the system works correctly, that does close that loophole. You know, the person who is having credit applied for in their name gets the notification from a valid credit grantor that this is really, you know, them. And right. So I can see how it works, given as long as everything fits together.
Right.
And I guess it's more practical for people who are dynamically needing credit. For example,
yes.
All of mine have been locked since that podcast 30 months ago. And I've never, you know, so nobody has successfully been able to look at my credit reports. I just haven't needed any. But, you know, I'm 62 and I'm at the point in my life where hopefully things have settled down and I'm not, you know, needing lots of credit now, unlike somebody in their 20s or 30s who's actively churning around, jumping around, moving, buying things and so forth, where locking all of the access to your reports is much less practical. Right,
exactly. If you're not super dynamic, a credit freeze works really, really well. But if you are, and you're relatively young and you're moving around the country a lot, a credit freeze, it's actually it's a huge hassle because, again, it's every single request has to be whitelisted. And imagine if everything you wanted to do in a modern society required you to call up, give a PIN, and whitelist an organization. It's actually a lot more hassle than people think.
Well, and probably just renting an apartment requires that your credit be checked because, you know, the landlord wants to make sure that you're not a deadbeat. So, you know, all kinds of things.
Yeah, and getting a job. When I was still working HR for the church, that's one of the first things we did. I mean, we checked social media, but we also checked the credit report because that kind of tells you whether or not someone's trustworthy. If they've declared 3 bankruptcies and their credit report is in the garbage, you start thinking, okay, this person doesn't have control over the personal finances. Maybe that's not a position that they should be in. It sounds horrible, but that's a publicly available piece of information. Of course, an employer is going to take advantage of it.